I've been working in recruitment now for about the last 7 to 8 months, and one thing that I've noticed, which is very common amongst all candidates that I've worked with, is basically this avoidance to express a time working at a company for a very short period. In this episode, I'll basically be talking to you a little bit about how you can avoid even being in that position in the first place and what things to look out for before you even start your first job. Okay? So first things first, the most common time that people lose candidates or people lose their employees is in the first 3 to 6 months. Okay, working in recruitment, I've realized this, that basically candidates nowadays, they will enter an environment, and within those first 3 to 6 months, they will be like, yep, this is not for me, nothing's going to change, and so they leave. Okay, the majority of employees are not going to be leaving multiple years into a company. So what this shows us is that it's basically that first impression for a candidate is most important. So from a recruitment perspective, we need to be looking at making sure that, I'm bringing in the right candidate for the right environment, and I'm making sure that, the business knows how to get the best out of this candidate. So I found that very, very interesting that, it's basically a concept of getting in, making sure that you're in that right environment, and that first impression will leave the lasting impression. And knowing that, most candidates, they're not interested in staying around for 2 3 years in an environment where they're not comfortable. If they don't feel that comfort straight away, if they don't feel like it's going to get the best out of them, they're going to leave, they're going to move on to something better. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at different ways that we can manage this from a candidate perspective, and what you can look into before you even start your first job. Okay, first things first, question the onboarding process. Okay, so this is something that businesses need to be able to get right, is making sure that there is a thorough onboarding process for all of their graduates. Okay, now for you guys as a candidate, you need to be questioning this. Okay, but how you question it is very, very important. All right, so what's important in this situation when you're understanding the onboarding process is for you. So you understand how you're going to be getting the training, what the training is going to be looking like, who's going to be giving the training to you, and what's the expectation for when you're going to learn the training. Okay, so you will find at a lot of companies when you're starting, obviously when you're making that transition from casual work to being a uni student to now a full-time worker, you're understanding a whole new scope of things. You're learning a whole new trade basically. Yes, you've got the degree, yes, you may have some transferable skills, but a lot of the time it's like picking up a new sport. You need to make sure that you're getting the right training, you need to make sure there's proper expectations, and that the person training you has the time. Okay, so talking about from my own experience, when I first got into recruitment, I was working in a smaller company, and yes, at the time, I only had two other co-workers, and one of them was literally the boss of the company, and the other one was a gentleman who was a recruiter but meant to be an operations manager. So yes, they gave me training. Yes, the onboarding process was good. I understood everything. But I could easily see that, if this was in another company and priorities weren't right, I could very easily have just slipped through the cracks there and not actually learnt much. So it's very, very important that, when you're in that interviewing process and they ask you to ask them some questions, be firm and ask them, be curious, be like, what does the onboarding process look like here? Who am I going to be learning from? What's the process? How long is it going to be taking? What time period are the training wheels meant to come off, etc., etc. It is your job to take responsibility and understand this very early on, so you can see if there's alignment there. Okay, it's very, very important for yourself that when you're looking in for these jobs, you need to remember as well, whilst the business is trying to find the ideal candidate, you're trying to find the ideal environment for yourself to work in. And even if you have no other offers elsewhere, if this company right now, they can't properly tell you how they're going to onboard you, they don't exactly know what that process looks like, it's just a little bit of a wishy-washy answer, they're going to kind of figure it out as time goes on, that may not be your environment. You may get into that environment, and after 2 to 3 months, you may be no better off than where you were before you even started. And you may be feeling stressed, you may be hating the environment, you may be hating even going into work, which is not what you want to be feeling in that first 2 to 3 months. And it's going to be a lot harder for you to find a new job elsewhere after 2 3 months, because businesses may be reluctant to work with you because you've only been at one company for a very short time, and trying to get references and things along these lines could be a lot more difficult as well. I'm not saying this to overwhelm you, I'm just saying these are practical possibilities. So if these are all practical possibilities, what you can do is control the situation where you can and ask about that onboarding process straight away and see if you would feel comfortable in that environment. These are the two most important things I would say, is trying to figure out who do you answer to and what is your genuine expectation, okay? So I know for myself, like when I first started working at my first company, as a basically like a recruitment associate, my job was to support the roles. I quickly realized that obviously in a smaller environment, we took on a lot more work. I had a lot more work to do and I was taking on things basically above my contract. Not so much of a problem there. But at the end of the day, we all kind of realized that as time was progressing on, there was maybe a bit of a misalignment as to what the company needed versus what I could provide. So again, a lot of the time when I first started at the company, before I even started my last business or my first company that I was working for, my director basically said that when she put out this job ad, she wanted a recruiter to help basically fill all these roles while she would focus on the business development. That's fine. That is a very reasonable thing to do. The problem is when I came in, obviously I had no recruitment experience. So whilst the core issue of the company was trying to get more business development and then having just established recruiters focus on this, I was brought in to kind of support my director from an admin perspective. So again, whilst that's not directly my fault, you want to make sure, it's not exactly their fault either, but you want to make sure that when you're going into these interviews, that you're understanding your expectation, you're understanding the alignment, and you're trying to understand what value you're bringing straight away. Okay, you're trying to understand that with your skill set, with an onboarding process, how are you going to be adding value in the next 3 to 6 months? Okay, especially in that first 6 month period, that's probably the best time frame I would ask to clarify expectations, because that's usually where probations end, is after that first 6 months. So I would be trying to understand from where I am today versus 6 months time, what exactly do you want to see from me? What value do I need to be bringing to ensuring that operations are running as smoothly as possible? Okay, that is another big thing to be understanding, is what is your genuine expectation? Yes, the contract says one thing, but what do you need to be bringing on a day-to-day basis to make the company and to make the team better? Okay, once you understand that, they'll be a lot clearer. If they're not clear at all, if it's a very wishy-washy answer, that may be another thing to kind of get you to take a step back and think, oh, okay, is this the environment for me? And if it aligns, amazing, go for it. But it's very important to clarify these expectations early so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into before you start, and you're not looking for a new job after 2 to 3 months. You need to really be testing the alignments early, which is very, very important. And what I mean by testing the alignments is, I think goes into my next point as well. Oh, there is no next point, sorry. But yeah, testing the alignments early and basically seeing, what's important to you versus what are they displaying, okay? So for a lot of young candidates, what I realize is they are happy to kind of take a role initially that's a little bit boring, a little bit mundane, but they just want to get industry exposure. I think that's great. I think that's fine. I encourage that, okay? But one thing I do notice is that another thing that candidates really want is internal growth, internal promotion. I love that. Again, go for it. But you need to be making sure that there actually is that pathway to grow, and that pathway to grow is official. It'll be rewarded with a new contract, a new salary, and that there is a promised time frame for when this could possibly happen. Okay, so you don't want to walk into a company, and particularly this happens more so with smaller companies, because obviously budgets are a lot different to a larger company and job titles can vary a lot more. They may not be able to give you a clearer answer as to, what that progression path will look like, what that next title will be, etc., etc. But if they're giving wishy-washy replies and you don't feel like you can genuinely see yourself actually growing there, take a step back and think, okay, is this the environment for me? This is a very smart decision and something that should definitely be done earlier on before you start, rather than working it out as time goes on, okay? So this is my last point here, is just making sure that that alignment is 100%, and you know that you're going to get the best out of yourself in the environment. They're going to get the best out of you. You can do your best work, and you're encouraged to do your best work, because you know that if you do really well after the first 6 months or a year, there is an opportunity for more money with a better job title that's going to improve your career, but you can do it in the current team. Okay, find out what's important to you, ask about that from there, learn from there, and then go into day one super excited. Okay, I hope you guys got some value from this video. If you guys enjoyed and you'd like to work with me on a one-to-one level, click the link below for a free consultation. We can have a chat and work out your goals. Hope you guys enjoyed. Take care. See you guys next time.